Hello, this is Brian Selassie, the Orthodox Catholic One here on YouTube, and this is my blog, Golden Sword Apologetics. Today's video will be about Psalm 37, specifically when it talks about inheriting the land or the earth. This is a favorite verse used by Jehovah's Witnesses who teach that there will be some who will return to the earth and the end days. But anyway, here is the relevant verse that they love to quote from. Psalm 37, verse 9, "For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord, they shall inherit the land." They claim that this teaches when the righteous Jehovah's Witness dies and is resurrected, but is not part of the elect class of born-again believers that go to heaven, because that's only 144,000 of them, and they derive this from the book of Revelation, even though that 144,000 were just Jewish virgins, but they pretend that it's about Jehovah's Witnesses specifically. Anyway, these people that don't go to heaven, they get to live on paradise earth. Again, they get to live on earth once again. Anyway, I'm interested in finding out the plain meaning of this verse, the idea that David had in mind when he wrote this psalm. Then finding the possible spiritual application that would be relevant to the New Testament under Christ. First, we're going to look at the usage of the inherit the land or earth. We see it being used in regards to Abraham when God gives Abraham land. But some of the land Abraham had to wait for because God was giving the people that he was going to take it from the time to get their act together. This is the Amorites specifically. God knew this would not happen with the Amorites, that they would not eventually turn around. But he gave them a chance anyway, a fair chance. But anyway, here are the verses about inheriting the land. "And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you forth from Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it." That's Genesis 15, verse 7. Then we go a couple chapters later in Genesis 28, when Abraham's already dead, and God's talking to one of Abraham's offspring. He says, "And give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee and thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham." And then we see Genesis 15, verse 16, which says, "And the fourth generation will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites will not be completed until then." That's referring to the sort of grace period God's giving to the Amorites. Then we have Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 9, which talks about inheritance also. The word inheritance and possess are very similar in the Hebrew. But anyway, here's what it says. "And the Lord said to me, Do not distress the Moabites, nor provoke them to the war, for I will not give you any of their land as an inheritance, because I have given Ar to the children of Lot as an inheritance." And then we have a few verses later, Deuteronomy 2:12. "And the Horites formerly dwelt in Seir, and the children of Esau were driving them out, and they exterminated them from before them and dwelt in their stead, just as the Israelites did in the land of their inheritance which the Lord gave them." And then a few verses later after that, in verse 19, it says, "And when you approach opposite the children of Ammon, neither distress them nor provoke them, for I will not give you any of the land of the children of Ammon as an inheritance, because I have given it to the children of Lot as an inheritance." So Israel is given inherited land that they will inherit. That was previously the possession of these Canaanite tribes, though not all of the Canaanites' land they took, because some of that land was in remote places like North Africa, Carthage. And the land that belonged to some of the more obscure tribes, as Exodus frequently refers to. For instance, Exodus 3, verse 8, talking about these tribes. And anyway, here's what the verse is. "I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jezebite." Anyway, these clans or tribes are mentioned frequently in the book of Exodus, and almost exclusively in the book of Exodus are they mentioned together. We see Exodus 3, Exodus 13, and Exodus 23, and Exodus 33. So, in the Bible, generally righteous people were given the land of the wicked people that were judged by God and subsequently evicted, or only allowed to live in the land if they were to pay tribute to the conquering ruler. Israel allowed many others to live in its territory in the time of Solomon on this condition. When Israel was disobedient, they were attacked, if not conquered, and made slaves, like in the case of the Babylonian captivity, when they were restored to their homeland. Then they were restored to their homeland, or in the era of the Romans, when they also had to pay taxes to Rome to be left alone. The plain reading King David probably had in mind in regards to Psalm 37 was almost certainly God's sense of giving actual land to more righteous nations than punishing other nations by taking their land away. Perhaps King David also had in mind the boundaries of the land of Israel in his own time. After David, his son Solomon ruled Israel when its borders were at its biggest. King Solomon, according to 1 Kings 4:21, ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. Now perhaps this was kept in mind, which would be a fulfillment of Genesis 15, as I mentioned earlier. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your offspring I will give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. So we see that as being a fulfillment of that verse, or perhaps King David had in mind the land the wars he was having with the Philistines and other battles in his own time in regards to King David. But anyway, let's go look at some more verses in the Torah and the rest of the Bible about inheriting the land. This is not going to be a complete comprehensive list because that would be a lot bigger. But anyway, here's an examples from other books, other verses in the Psalms. Psalm 25 verse 13, and his shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the land. Notice it says seed, not the person himself. And then we have Genesis 37 verse 9. It says, for the evildoer shall be cut off, and they shall wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the land. That's the one we started with. And then we have 2 verses later, it says, but the meek shall inherit the land, and they shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. And then verse 22 of that same psalm, it says, for such be the blessed of him shall inherit the land, and they shall be cursed of him shall be cut off. And then we have Psalm 37 verse 29 that says, the righteous shall inherit the land and dwell therein forever. And then we have Psalm 37 verse 34, which says, wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt thee to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it. And then we have Psalm 44 that also talks about how didst drive out the heathen, which is actually the Hebrew word goyim, which refers to nations, with thy hand, and plantest them. How thou didst afflict the people and cast them out. The word cast or evict is also similar to the word for inherit or possess in the Hebrew Bible. And here's another example, 44, the next verse, verse 3, is, for they got not the land in possession by the sword, neither did their own arm save them, but thy right arm, and thy right hand, and thy arm, and the light of thine countenance, because thou hadst a favor unto them. And here we see Psalm 69 verse 35 that says, for God will save Zion, and will build the cities of Judah, that they may dwell there and have it in possession. And then here's my final example from the Psalms. It says, and gave them the lands of the heathen, and they inherited the labors of the people. In these, the Psalms is talking about taking land by force, killing, cutting, driving out as part of the inheritance, which cannot refer to heaven, at least not easily. Furthermore, it refers to the seed of a person inheriting the land, as in Psalm 25 verse 13. This is what happened in the case of Abraham. His seed received it, not Abraham himself. Abraham received relatively little land compared to what was promised to him, which would be fulfilled in the time of King Solomon. And also, I should also mention that the one that says forever here, a lot of times in the Hebrew Bible, forever, like olam, just means for a long time, as I show in my other videos. But I have to double check that olam is actually used right there. But anyway, going back to the case of more verses regarding land inheritance, we see Isaiah 54 verse 3. For thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. Then we have Isaiah 57 verse 13, which says, When thou criest, let thy companies deliver thee, but the wind shall carry them away, vanity shall take them, but he that putteth his trust in me shall possess the land and inherit my holy mountain. So it's talking about a mountain. His holy mountain, which possibly is heaven. Then we have Isaiah 60 verse 21, which says, Thy people also shall be righteous. They shall inherit the land forever, the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. And then again, Isaiah 65 verse 9, it says, And I will bring forth the seed of a seed out of Jacob, out of Judah, an inheritor of my mountains, and mine elect shall inherit it, and my servant shall dwell there. So Psalm 37 could have a spiritual application, just as inherent my holy mountain seems to. As I mentioned elsewhere, land in the book of Psalms and the Hebrew Bible can refer to the temple ground, which was not yet built when King David wrote the psalm, though it's not excluded as being prophetic, in which case it's sometimes called the land of the living, and the temple itself was a sort of heaven on earth, or a sort of microcosm of the universe, since it was where God dwelt on earth. That's why it's sort of like a heaven on earth. But also I want to mention that this phrase, holy mountain, according to the book of Ezekiel, that seemed to be where the Garden of Eden was located. It was on a mountain, and this is also found in Syrian theology of the Christians. But anyway, going back to the issue, to what I was talking about before, take into account the Sermon on the Mount, the beatitude about the meek inheriting the earth or the land, probably has the kingdom of heaven in mind as an inheritance, and uses the word land as an expression for it, since it was used for an inheritance, since land was inherited in the Old Testament, so it was sort of an analogy or a figure of speech. Now let's go through the Beatitudes of the Sermon on the Mount as found in the book of Matthew, chapter 5. Starts out, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And the next one says, Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. And then it says, Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then finally, blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. It would seem strange for Jesus to interject an earthly existence considering as a reward. Considering before and after the Beatitudes, he explicitly makes references to people going to heaven for being poor in spirit and persecuted for his sake, and slandered. But as you can see, heaven's mentioned here, heaven's mentioned down here too. And also sons of God and Jehovah's Witness theology could pretty much refer to the 144,000. But regardless, why would these people get stuck? Furthermore, if there's only 144,000 limited to in these latter days, that the 144,000 are simply restricted to that elect group of Jehovah's Witnesses. What about the rest of the Jehovah's Witnesses who believe they are blessed, that they are poor in spirit? I guess they're not going to heaven. Only 144,000 are poor in spirit, just as 144,000 are considered persecuted for the sake of righteousness, just as 144,000 are persecuted and slandered and so on. So only 144,000 of them, even though there's way more than 144,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. I guess if there's 144,001, that person would be given a raw deal. I mean, it would be completely unfair, but because it's heaven is capped off at 144,000 in these days. Anyway, this is Berhain Selassie, the Orthodox Catholic One, here on YouTube and Golden Sword Apologetics.